Welcome to another edition of the Ray of Hope Ministry Relief Podcast. I am thankful to have Casey Paramore with us today, and he is with a ministry called For His Name's Sake, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that ministry. But before we do, Casey, why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your testimony?
Yes, sir. So, as he said, my name's Casey Paramore. I'm a current student at Southeastern. I'm a junior there. I serve as the youth pastor at Temple Free Will Baptist in Greenville, North Carolina. And just kind of a backstory of who I am. I grew up in a little town called Stanley, North Carolina, population a few thousand. Um, I grew up at a Presbyterian church. I know that's a shocker, me being in Free Will Baptist now. But when I got in middle school, we made the transition over to Cramerton Church, and I already had been going to school there since kindergarten. And I got saved when I was little, but I think when I got into high school, my vision, how I tell people, I think my vision got blinded of who God really was. And so I kind of started doing things I shouldn't have been doing. And so then, second trip I ever went with Cramerton, we went to Youth Aflame. It was 2022, and Gene Williams was preaching one night, and he was preaching on it was in Peter, cast all your cares upon him, for he cares for you. And so that really just stuck to me, and I knew I needed to get it right that night. And so I don't know why, but I just got up and I went down to the altar and rededicated my life. And a few months later, I answered a call to preach. And what's really weird is that the theme for that Youth Aflame was encounter. Well, what's really ironic is that our youth group name at Temple is Encounter. So it's kind of like a full circle moment. But I answered the call to preach, and then went to Southeastern this past year. I went in as a sophomore, and it's been good so far. I'm passing, so we're good. Um, and in the midst of all that, we started the For His Namesake ministry, which I'll talk more about in a minute.
I like the name that you chose. I have your sticker on my little journal. I look at it every day, and I was wondering. I know a little bit about your ministry, but some of our listeners may not. Why don't you go ahead and introduce us to the ministry and kind of tell us, the journey that you took to go from and getting things right with God, answering the call of the ministry, and starting this new ministry. That's all happened within the last few years, it sounds like. Tell us a little bit more about that journey.
Yeah, so it started when I was a senior in high school with For His Namesake, because I'd answered the call in 22, so I was going into my junior year, and I was involved in student leadership my entire time in high school. I was high school chaplain for 3 of the years, and so there was always just like a burden for other people and just young people in general. And so when I really got to my senior year, there was a lot of little things that had kind of built up and happened the past school year. And I'm like, we realized, or at least me and a few other guys did, I'm like, well, when my class graduates, no, there's not really any other class in our school that's really been involved in like stuff at our school. Like they've all just kind of like we've always been the class that did everything. Like it just was just like that. And so the more I thought about it, I'm like, if we when we leave, our school is going to be a mess on that side. Like these kids, like are going to have no clue what to do. I'm sure they'll figure it out. But it was also just like a burden for future leaders in general, because I knew if it was a problem at our school, and it wasn't just because of our class, like it was multiple other things going on. But I'm like, if it's a problem at our school, I know it's a problem other places as well. And so I met with our principal and I talked to her about, like I'd like to just start like a little Bible study with some guys at her school. Just meet once a month and like I don't really know what we're going to call it. I don't know what we're going to do, but I just like to do that with like a select few people. And so we sat and we talked about it and we picked about 20, 25 guys. And so I kept praying about it because I didn't know what to call it. I didn't know the direction for it. And so I was reading the 23rd Psalm, And so when you get to verse 3, it says, He leads us down the paths of righteousness for His name's sake. And I was like, hmm, that sounds good, but I don't know. Maybe it's just me that just thinks it sounds cool. So I prayed about it, and then the next day, or next within the next few days, my first class, my teacher would always read a Bible verse for the day. And the weird thing was, it was that verse. And I'm like, what? And so I just thought it was coincidence. And then what was weird is that everywhere I went, I kept seeing Psalm 23, Psalm 23, everywhere I went. And it's like in places that it's always been there, but I never really noticed it before. And what's hilarious is that in the Cramberton Church bathroom, above one of the urinals, it says Psalms 23, 3. And I had never noticed it before. And so just after prayer, and I just feel like God was just telling me like this is where we need to go. That's why we called it for His name's sake. And our little slogan is that it's not about us, it's all about Christ, all about Him. And so that's kind of how it started, and it started on October 4th of 2023. Wow, that's been a long time ago now, the more I think about it. But we started that day. We had about 15 guys, and we just did a little Bible study, and we met once a month. Um, and we did it that whole senior year, and that's really how it started.
So, part of your ministry, it sounds like, is trying to encourage future leaders.
Hmm.
Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you had to sum up like the heartbeat of your ministry, how would you like if somebody you were talking to somebody had no clue what it was and you said, "Well, this is the heartbeat of our ministry." What would you say?
I would say probably just our mission statement, which I should have said it earlier, but we're a leadership ministry that wants to equip young people with leadership skills that they can use in their church, their school, their community, but most importantly, their personal Christian walk. And just showing them that in leadership, it's not about you. It's not about being on the stage or being in the spotlight. It's about doing everything for Christ.
I remember you brought up Youth Aflame, and I remember a few years ago when Youth Aflame was actually held at Cramerton Church,
Hmm.
and Brother Christian Powell preached a sermon that I don't think I'll ever forget called "Who's Going to Fill Their Shoes?"
Hmm.
And he had the shoes of different missionaries and pastors and Christian people, their literal shoes up on the altar.
Hmm.
And it just really challenged me to think, that, we're grateful for the heritage that we have and grateful for the leaders of the past, but like, who's going to fill their shoes? And it's going to be, young men like yourself and the generation that you're trying to influence that's coming along. And I don't, we have, as you probably know, a crisis in our denomination of not having enough pastors to fill the churches that we have. Um, and so I really have a burden as well to see this generation really step up and take on those roles.
Right.
We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but I know I know you're excited about your new book that
Yeah.
that you put together, kind of a collection, I think, of different authors. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your book, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the ministry.
Okay. Yeah. So we kind of backstory of why we even did the book was through the class that we had at Cramerton. It was just like God was really working in it there. And there was, I think all the kids were impacted in some way. There was about three or four guys that like just got on fire, and they were like, they're so passionate about leading and just getting closer to Christ. And so my thought process, it was like I said earlier, like I know if it's a problem here, it's a problem other places. And so, um, if I know God can work in it here, I know He can work in it other places. And we were trying to figure out how we could even get this, what we did at Cramerton, to other places. And so we decided to do a book, which after almost 2 years of contacting pastors and spamming them with emails and text messages and like you're 7 months behind schedule and all those good things. We finally got the book. I don't know if y'all can see it, but I'll hold it up here. But it's the For His Namesake book, and it's written by technically, if you include me, there's 18 people that wrote in it, 18 pastors in our denomination. And all these people were somebody that were either like did a something with the class or they were just a big role model in my life. Um, like just for instance, like Josh Bear, he was my pastor at Cramerton. Brother Gene, he was the one that preached a sermon that rededicated my life with. Brother Christian Powell, um, Noah Taylor, Stephen Brackeen, Brian Williams, Jim Markham, Scott Coghill, Heath Ferguson, Dr. Moody, Aaron Pendergraft, Marcos Osuna, Brother Jeff Jones, Aaron Howard, Ken Cash, Jim McComas, and Jeff Manning. And just kind of the whole point of the book, why there's so many people that wrote in this, is that one, I don't know anything. So that's why I got other people to write in the book. But each chapter talks about a different characteristic of leadership. And so there's 16 chapters. You go starting with Step Up by Stephen Brackeen, going through the book, talking about, I think, some of the main characteristics of leadership, like integrity, obedience, decision making, and there's so many topics in there that I think will be helpful, not only to the young person, but I think to the adult too. Because there's a church planner that wanted to use this for his church staff, and that was like, oh, okay. But I really think this book can impact really anybody in any generation. And I think probably, in my opinion, the most important aspect of leadership, because there's so many, like leadership is such a hard word to define because it's so many different things. But we ended the book with the topic of faithful, because I really believe that I think if you're faithful, one, especially being a Christian leader, faithful to God, and you're doing His will, I think He will bless you in your leadership and lead you where you need to be. Um, so after that long time, we finally got this 170 something page book. And if I do it again, I'll probably slap myself. But I'm glad this one's done though. So
Well, I'm excited about getting a copy of that and checking it out. For anybody that would like a copy, what would be the best way for them to contact you about that?
honestly, at the moment, since we've just got it, it's really hard. Probably the best way to get in touch with me to get one, since we don't have an online website yet, is probably just email me at cparamorefhns at gmail.com. And that will, if you email me, I'll get back with you and I'll figure out. And hopefully someday at some time I can make it up there to the beautiful mountains of North Carolina and come to y'all's church and talk about it. But yeah, right now that's the best way to get in contact and get a copy of the book.
Awesome. So let's go back a little bit and talk about a couple more things. You mentioned, just the importance of having leaders that are stepping up and, out of the younger generation.
Hmm.
Um, you hear people sometimes say the youth are the church of tomorrow.
Hmm.
Would you agree or disagree with that statement, and why or why not?
I would partially agree and partially disagree. Because I mean, it's a true statement that, the young people of the day are going to be the leaders of the church tomorrow. I mean, there's really no arguing that. I mean, because we all know people, I guess people like me and people at college, they're going to be the pastors in a few years. Um, but disagree with it because one thing that I really focus on is that with young people, I'm like, you can start leading today. And if you start leading today, you'll be a better leader tomorrow. Um, and that's my thing that I tell people. I'm like, don't wait till you get into your late 20s and 30s and 40s to start leading. Like start now when you're young. Like, like Paul was telling Timothy, let no man despise thy youth. Because Timothy was going into a church where most of the congregation was older than him. And if, not to sound heretical or anything, but most of the church probably was saying, "You're a young punk that doesn't know anything." That's probably what they were saying to them. And I feel like a lot of people, sadly, today think the same thing of young people. They maybe not say we're punks, but maybe like, I don't think he's ready yet. I don't, they're not comfortable handing over. And my prayer is that, the older generation that will all, and not even them, but just the younger generation, realize that the young people of today, that if we start leading today and start getting opportunities and just even over small things, God will give us, if we can be faithful with small things, He'll give us bigger things. And I think if we can just be faithful in those small things and just start doing those little simple tasks that are handed to us, like ministry, sometimes cleaning the bathroom. We'll be faithful in cleaning the bathroom or be faithful in, whatever small things handed to you. And I think if you start developing your leadership skills now, which I think, first of all, for a good Christian leader, goes right back to praying and reading your Bible. Um, but if you start there and then just start adding on stuff and start to be more involved with stuff, I think when you get to the time when you can have a position of leadership, I think you'll be so much more equipped than somebody that waited to that point.
I think that's great. And I think there's a weight on my generation and generation that's older than me that, Paul also told Titus to teach, the older women to teach the younger women. And I think certainly there's an
Mhm.
implication for the older men as well,
Right.
that we have a responsibility to take the initiative to try to develop our replacements, so to speak.
Right.
And I tell our church that, the youth are not the church of tomorrow, they're the church of today. I said, because if
Mhm.
they're not the church of today, we won't have a church tomorrow.
Right.
And I understand, obviously you don't put a 8-year-old that just got saved in, teaching Sunday school,
Right.
but you bring them along, you teach them, you train them, you give them opportunities to get involved and so yeah, I think we're on the same page there. I think it's so important. So, you said you're a junior in college, so getting ready to start your junior year or
Yes, sir. I'm getting
okay,
ready
so
to.
starting your junior year. What is the vision for the future? What's your hope and dreams for this ministry and what do you see Casey Paramore doing in the next 5, 10 years?
Well, hopefully, like I said, right now I'm at Temple Church in Greenville, North Carolina, and I've been on staff there for about 9 months now, 9, 10 months. I grew up going there because I had family going down there, so I've always had a connection with the church. And we're a church that runs about 70 people. Greenville's a town with a lot of other churches, not only Free Will Baptist churches, but a lot of big non-denominational churches. And so it's just trying to get the ground rolling again where we're at. I came in with a almost pretty much dead youth ministry. I started with 8 kids and teens in total. And right now on Wednesdays, during the summer, it's weird, but on a regular Wednesday night, we have about 20 to 25. And we've got a few families back involved that had stopped coming. And I just love it there. And I hope I get to stay there for the next, hopefully, a long time. But really was for his name's sake. I mean, I would just love to, keep going places with the book. I just really went to my first 2 places, the National Convention and Cramerton Church, and planning on going to some other places authors who wrote the chapter. But really, a main thing that's coming up for us is our For His Namesake conference. We're having our first For His Namesake conference on October 4th this year, which, if you paid attention, For His Namesake started on October 4th, which I think is really coincidental. I just think it's really cool how 2 years later, here we are having a conference. And I'm like, it really just proves that God can work through anybody. But um, So we're having a conference this fall in Greenville, North Carolina for the eastern part of the state. It's a 1 day thing, and we're having some leadership sessions done by some local youth pastors, and we're having a service that night with Brother Jeff Manning at Unity Free Will Baptist Church. And I'm really excited for that. And right now we have about 15 to 16 churches coming. And hopefully, if this goes well, I talked to some people at the convention, and our goal is to start bringing on another state every year. So probably the next year will be South Carolina or Tennessee, and then we've talked about going up to Virginia and then Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana, hopefully. Um, but that's kind of where we're heading right now, and it might go well. I don't know. It might be utter failure in October. We'll see what the Lord does with it. But I feel like that's probably my vision. That's my kind of my set goals for right now, and just keep continuing to help people that need help. And I mean that's all what the ministry is about, is just help those who are hurting, help those who are in need, and just encourage the encouragers. So
So obviously, we need to pray for that conference that's coming up in October.
yes, sir.
Are there any other prayer requests that we can pray with you about, or maybe concerning the ministry that you would like our listeners to remember?
Probably just pray for that as well, but pray for just the ministry in general, and pray for me, and just listen, stay faithful to God, to listen to where He wants me to go, and just to keep reminding ourselves, which I think is so important for leaders, like when we do get to a position of leadership, like to stay humble. We have to stay humble, and that's just something I pray constantly. Like, Lord, let me stay humble, and don't let all these things that I do interfere with your plan. Um, so just probably pray for me on that realm, and just pray for the ministry in general.
Well, Casey, thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day to be with us today. And I think even though our ministries have different focuses, I think that they dovetail well together.
Mhm.
And I think if we don't have young people stepping up, and we don't have my generation helping them, we're not going to have church planners tomorrow. We're not going to have pastors tomorrow. And so I pray that God would help us to work together for the cause of Christ to make a difference in this generation. So thanks
Amen.
again for being with us today.
Yes, sir. Thank you.